A lot of you don't know, but I'm basically batch filming these videos, almost like what, 40, 50 in a row. And some of you may wonder, like, how many liters of tea? I mean, it's tetaric. Yeah, probably more than 2 liters of tea per day. But back to our video series. Chapter 5, Cultural History and Heritage. So you may know the saying that the history of lions have been written by hunters. So I wanted to showcase a few initiatives where it's basically lions writing finally their own history. The first initiative I wanted to talk about is Muslim History Tours, and the guy behind it, Abdul Malik Taylor. So you maybe remember my video about Victorian Muslims, where I feature him and he explains the concept of the fez, because the thing is, not only he is the first professionally qualified Muslim tour guide in Britain, but he is the only one wearing a fez hat. So Abdul Malik offers and has been offering for the past 10 plus years guided tours across London, on the Thames, in museums and other places such as Woking, Brighton, Isle of Wight, showing people traces of Islamic heritage in Britain. So he takes participants on buses, on double-deckers. I've attended some of his buses tour where you cruise across London, and sometimes you stay in the bus, sometimes you go on foot to see by yourself some of the monuments. So I've been in one of these cruise ships on the Thames. And not only that, but Abdul Malik is genuinely passionate about history, and to his credit, we have to credit him the discovery or the finding or the rediscovery of places such as the very first Eid prayer site in London, the first mosque in London. Because Abdul Malik may not have, a PhD or stuff, but he has been doing archival work, the work of a proper researcher. And he told me, for example, his journey of finding the first mosque in London. It took him months of reading books, going to different archival sites. That's an insane amount of work. And even when it comes to his tours, so he told me that it takes on average 3 months to organize a tour in a location he's familiar with, 6 months if he's not familiar with the place, because he's got to do all the research. It all started for him in 1999, where he told me it started as a hobby. And instead of choosing something like engineering or IT, he wanted a job where you have job satisfaction, not only just for the money. And he told me, he always gets the buzz when he finds a place that has been forgotten for ages, that people never heard before. And it's not always successful. Sometimes he spends months and months reading archives, reading about a location or a site, and he can't find them. Because maybe, they've been demolished, they've been built over. And for more than 10 years, I think almost 16 years now, he's been doing this single-handedly. He doesn't have a team. All the work, it's him. And of course, it doesn't go without challenges. And the first challenge, you may guess, are the institutions. Because even if, we think that museums, art galleries, they have a ticking box policy for diversity, well, it works when it's black people, whether it's Hindu, Sikhs. But when it comes to Muslims, since 9/11, well, it doesn't go very well. There's that. And, well, one concern he has is the British Muslim community is not interested either. But fortunately, he gets a lot of demand from Muslims who are in North America, Muslims from Southeast Asia. So if you want to know more about Moroccan pirates, North African Tudors, or Shakespeare's Muslim friend, I invite you to join one of his tours. It's wonderful, and he's a great guide. Things are explained very, very simply. It's even for kids, it's very entertaining. And he's a great guy. And his tours are priced much lower than any other touristy tours you can find in London. The other initiative is Everyday Muslim. Its full name is Everyday Muslim Heritage and Archive Initiative. It is the only and the oldest long-term archival project, which basically builds a central archive about Muslim lives in the UK. And again, behind this project is one person, Sadia Ahmed. She had the idea in 2009, started in 2014, and she's done what has never been done before. She has reached out personally, single-handedly, with all sorts of community groups, schools, academics, researchers, museums, mosques, archives, and much more. And she's been collecting all sorts of materials, whether it is pictures, recordings, handwritten letters, poetry, music. Because Muslims in the UK have produced an immense quantity of cultural material, which of course, and this is why she started, you cannot find this like anywhere. I mean, you may have a few documents in some archives, but again, it's all over the country. You have dozens of archive libraries across the country where some parts of this cultural legacy is disseminated and perhaps forgotten. And her intention was for her kids to see and witness the contributions of Muslims to the country, traces of what the communities have built in the past. Because in the past, the problem is in narratives around Muslims, whether it was outside of the UK or it was inside, was always done like through third parties, researchers, anthropologists, journalists, writers, painters. They would depict what they were seeing through their own lenses. So Sadia's idea is to create an unmediated, like a first-person view and comprehensive perspective on Muslims in Britain. If no one takes care of the preservation of this history, who's going to do it? And this is why she started. He is aiming at creating collections of items, but also connections. So she has been organizing various projects around historical events and with different communities. For example, we associate Muslims in Britain with people from South Asia or the Middle East, but Black Muslims in Britain have had a huge part and role to play in the development of what we see nowadays. Because if we forget our history, we, by definition, forget who we are. How was it to live in these conditions? How was it to live like a Muslim life? Whether it is, how would Eid look like back in the days? How would people organize themselves for praying when there was no mosques? How were the first social movements, the first organizations created? How would people deal with social pressures and challenges such as racism and Islamophobia? Looking at the past and how people did things can give us ideas about how to overcome challenges we find in the present. And similarly to Muslim history tours, this is something which at first British Muslim communities were not very much interested, because it is nothing really, cool, Instagrammable, marketable, people cannot make money out of it. Just like for Abdul Malik, people were more interested in doing selfie tours where you just go around the main monuments for your social media and that's it. But for example, Abdul Malik has always refused to do these kind of selfie tours because this is not what his business is about. But I'm always fascinated at the resilience. They've done these kind of things, these projects, these initiatives without any resources, without funding, without support like huge sponsors, or they don't have a big following on social media. I mean, at least they didn't have it back in the days. But it always amazes me how they've managed to go that far, despite the constraints and the challenges and the barriers. But as Sadia puts it, when you believe in something, and even, as a Muslim, your duty is not to change things. Your duty is only to pass on the message. Your duty is to plant seeds, because the consequences, the impact is not in our control. But these initiatives are very, very important for the collective psyche, because although we are more familiar with the history of colonization, where people have invaded countries, stolen resources, exploited people, killed people, there was times where those from the East, those who were considered the barbarians, were invited and had a red carpet treatment. I heard about Muslims who were invited to the king's court, Muslims mingling with poets, artists, Muslim figures having their portrait done and exhibited in the National Portrait Gallery. There was a time where, despite all this, people can say, once we were here, once we were respected. So in previous videos in chapter 1, I talk about how being part of a diaspora is being connected to a feeling of nostalgia, a longing to a place, to a time which is sometimes romanticized, like people romanticize the golden age of Islam, or a bit more recently, how people have taken things like victories in the field of MMA or TV series like Ertugrul some kind of celebration, I would say, exercise in the restoration of self-esteem, because these are all events, these are all elements that tell us, the collective Muslim psyche, that once, we were powerful, once, we were respected. But their work, the work of Sadia Abdul Malik, is very, very important in the sense that for ages, Muslims were the subject of research. They were studied by Western researchers and Western thinkers. And this colonial narrative, despite, Muslims or the Islamicate being having produced a lot of elements we use in nowadays science, in literature, and in art, and many other fields. But this colonial narrative has embedded in the collective psyche, not only Muslims, that only white people, only the West can be producer of knowledge. And this is exactly what Hussein Boulan deplores when he analyzes meta-colonialism through mental health institutions in Sudan, who are just copy-pasting Eurocentric models without adapting them to the reality faced by Sudanese people. Not so long ago, 43% of people who were polled in Britain said that they were proud of the colonization. So I think it is more important than ever that people reclaim the narrative, that they are able to just tell themselves, we don't have to convince anyone that we can produce knowledge, we can produce our own culture, we can write our own stories. If you are in the UK, have a look at what they're producing and join them in one of the events or one of the tours. I've personally been on them, my wife's been on it, some friends have been on it, and it's just been great. It's very artisanal, it's very, handcrafted. When it's, one person who dedicates their lives to something, it's very much different to, when you go, let's say, to a chain restaurant where everything is standardized. This is pure, handcrafted history you can feel. It's just amazing and really good quality people. So if you want to dive deeper in the topic and continue the conversation, I encourage you to subscribe to my newsletter. Well, I'll be updating you about in-person events I'll be organizing, whether in the UK, France or the US, but also online events where I'll be distributing parts of my work, and we'll be able to have lively conversations. So thank you very much for watching, and as always, take care of yourselves and each other.